Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we're continuing our coverage on the X-Men 97 prequel series, where now not only do we take a closer look at what Sinister's cooking, but also we get to see Wolverine's initial reaction after learning Jean, or at least who they had believed to be Jean at the time, is having Scott Summers' baby. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so coming back, the first thing we see is another FC news broadcast reported by Trish Tilby, who some of you might recognize from the animated series or even the older issues of X Factor. But right here, she's delivering the latest details from earlier this evening when the Nasty Boys attacked Dazzler during the Charles Xavier Memorial Concert, where at the time the Nasty Boys thought this was a good way to stir up some trouble and make the X-Men look bad. But instead, it did the opposite, with the X-Men's involvement being reported as a high-profile act of heroism, which in addition to the other things going on, like President Kelly shining a brighter light on mutants, improving public relations, to where now having the X-Men stop this attack, it just makes them look better. But as Trish Tilby moves on to the next topic, which had something to do with Psylocke, it is abruptly interrupted by the Fist of Sinister, who just destroys this CRT television. Because as you could imagine, he's not at all excited to see this news broadcast confirm what he already knew this attack was gonna do. Because for Sinister, it's in his best interest that humanity hates mutants, and even more so the X-Men. And the reason why Sinister wants humanity to hate mutants in this series is because for years, it's worked in his favor as a distraction, so Sinister could advance his research while the X-Men fought their battles on other fronts, which keeps them distracted and their focus off of him. Because otherwise, if the X-Men get closer to achieving Xavier's dream, they'll have way more time to figure out Sinister's plan. And because Sinister is so close right now, because he even says it, he's like, the key to my genetic research is finally within my grasp, incubating within one of the X-Men, which, as we know, this is referring to the child of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor. But because he's so close to achieving his goal, he's willing to do whatever it takes to buy some extra time, which is why he brings forth his Sinister Seven, who we'll talk more about in a little bit. But right after this, we head back to the X-Mansion, where Jean, air quotes, has just broke the news to Scott that they're having a baby. And mind you, this whole conversation was overheard by Wolverine because right before this, him and Scott were just training in the Danger Room. And so it's not like Logan was being a super creeper, but at the same time, he did stick around to hear what was going on, and he caught a stray as a result. So Jean hands Scott the pregnancy test that she still took even though she could already feel the child. She just wanted to be sure. But it's funny because when she hands it to Scott, he's like, I can't read it. It's supposed to be a red line, right? Because you know, my visor. Reading a pregnancy test is my one weakness. No, seriously, the two of them are overjoyed about this. But with Wolverine getting the news, and especially in this way, like imagine training in the Danger Room, and then you step out and you catch a stray. Cold world. But following this, he makes his way for the garage. And I remember in our last talk, one of you guys were in the comments like, oh snap, Wolverine's about to make Cyclops another convertible. But that wasn't the case this time, and instead Wolverine just hopped in the Jeep and got up out of there. Which from here, this lets Storm know, after having her talk with Jean, that Logan also knows what's up. So after he peels out, Storm follows to make sure that he's okay. Meanwhile, back over with Scott and Jean, Scott's like, hey, we gotta tell Beast, since he's likely to know the best paternal care for mutant pregnancies. But while they're here, the mansion proximity sensors trigger an alert. So Scott tells Jean that he's got to get her somewhere safe, which initially leads her to believe that Scott's just overreacting, until the alarm is followed up with a boom, which now reveals not only that Cyclops was right, but also the fact that this attack came from Carter Alexander Reiking, the mutant known as Hazard, where in his case, his body produces an insane amount of energy that he's only able to control by way of cybernetics, and this guy's been holding a grudge against Xavier for years, which you can even say goes as far back as his father working with Xavier's father on a government-funded project called Black Womb that was designed to research genetics and mutation. And if I remember correctly, it's pretty much the same backstory in the animated series, but for the most part, what we're shown here is more so the case of Hazard feeling betrayed by Charles, since Charles didn't help him when he first got his powers and he couldn't control them. And that's why Hazard's here saying things like Xavier was a liar and a manipulator. But nonetheless, we know that Hazard didn't just pop up here on his own, but instead this is one of many attacks on the X-Men. as a result of Sinister covering his tracks. So from here, the next thing we do is head over to Bishop, Gambit, Rogue, and Jubilee, who are all heading back in the Blackbird from the Xavier Memorial Concert, when out of nowhere, they're hit by an electromagnetic pulse. So Bishop's more or less like, I'll do my best to put this thing down gently. And then Rogue is just like, or I could just get out and carry the jet, you know, because I mean, why wouldn't she? But as soon as they touch down, they're attacked by Sienna Blaze, who's ready to hit them again with another electromagnetic attack. But before we see more of how this plays out, we head back over to Wolverine, where at this time Storm's caught up with him at the bar. So at first she starts with a little bit of small talk about her new hairdo, before telling Logan she saw him leave the mansion. So at first he thinks she's just come here to talk to an old friend, but then Storm's like, Logan, tell me, is this about Jean? And right there he just opens up. Cause at first Logan's just like, man, so I was the last to know. But Storm assures him that it's not even like that, because she was never told directly either. Storm just figured it out by way of a conversation, where halfway through she realized what was really going on. So from here, Logan lets her know how his mutant powers more or less set him up in this whole situation. Cause he tells her that he wasn't trying to snoop around on Jean and the Boy Scout, but the bad thing about enhanced senses is sometimes you hear stuff you're not meant to hear. And you know, to be honest, we can even take that a step further, because in addition to that, like I've said before, a healing factor is not going to heal a broken heart. And lastly, and I mean this one, I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but the healing factor is also keeping him from getting drunk. So really, Storm coming out here to talk to him was the best thing that could have happened at this time. But in the middle of this conversation, Wolverine picks up a very familiar scent, and needless to say, it's not a pleasant one, because right here he turns around and it's Sabretooth and the Marauders, which is kind of a surprise, but not really, because when you're dealing with Sinister in this era, you kind of already know the recipe. But for a moment here, we jump back over to the X-Mansion, where at this very moment Cyclops is just laying into Hazard, and rightfully so, because this guy literally tried to drop a wall on the mother of his unborn child, so he's giving this dude the business. And I gotta say, I appreciate how Beast just jumps in to stomp this guy, while admitting that he doesn't know what's going on here, because it's just like, man, now that's a day one homie. But immediately after this, Hazard ends up shooting through the roof of the X-Mansion, where above he threatens to destroy it, as a way to get back at Charles Xavier, since he wasn't there for Hazard when his powers manifested, which nearly left Hazard in ruin. So as payback, he wants to destroy the X-Mansion, as a way of attacking Xavier's legacy. Meanwhile, not too far away, Bishop and the others continue to take on Sienna Blaze, where in her case, because she's able to tap into the Earth's electromagnetic spectrum, there's an insane amount of power that she's able to pull from and redirect into energy blasts. But anytime she does, it also introduces the risk of harming the Earth's electromagnetic field if she absorbs or distorts too much of it. And that's why things get really risky here when Rogue sneaks up behind her and begins to absorb her powers. Because when Rogue borrows the powers of others, it's not like she automatically gets the instructions on how to use them. And I mean, sure, had she held on longer, she would have gotten that, and more. But right here after this quick touch, Rogue borrows Sierra's powers, and she's out of control. And right after this, when we go back to Wolverine and Storm, Wolverine takes on Sabretooth, while Storm pretty much goes up against everybody else. And it's a bit of a challenge that they're facing here, because on one hand, with Storm facing Riptide, she's got that in the bag, because all he can do is stir up the wind, while she can control the elements. But in addition to handling him, as well as using her powers to change clothes, which is something I've always loved about Storm in the animated series, but it becomes a problem when she has to take on a number of these guys at the same time, while also avoiding civilian casualties. And in the case of Prism, he's gonna reflect her lightning strikes, so there's a lot that Storm's gotta focus on here. But in the middle of this rumble, a second Sabretooth shows up, and it's one of those things where it's just enough of a distraction to turn the tables here, cause now Wolverine and Storm got help from Morph. And seeing this, it really just goes back to what Storm was explaining to Wolverine at the beginning of this series, when she more or less told him how as a team they're way more effective together than they are as individuals, redistributing their powers and their focus in multiple different directions. So it's nice to see that come back around in a positive way. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.